So one of the most debated things in golf instruction comes down to how we hold the golf club. And as simple as it seems like it should be, it seems like every time you read an article on what makes a good grip, it's only more confusing. So what we're going to take a look at in this video are some of the easy things that we can do to make sure we're creating a functional grip that's going to not only allow us to swing the club with as much speed as possible, but also help us be as precise and have as much accuracy as possible. So make sure you stay tuned because you're not going to want to miss this. So when it comes to making a grip, I have a lot of questions myself personally, because I've never really understood why I would make a grip. So I used to interlock my fingers. So I never understood why we would interlock or overlap, because both of those grips tend to cause me a lot of pain in my fingers. And generally, what I've found throughout the course of time is that when we talk about grip, there really wasn't a reason as to why we hold the club the way we do, other than an opinion of somebody who started playing the game very early on and their way became accepted. So generally speaking, the Vardon overlap grip is named for Harry Vardon, who is a great golfer, no doubt. But Harry didn't have a reason to do this other than he did it because somebody told him to. So when it comes to making a grip, whether it's an overlap, an interlock, or a 10 finger, quite honestly, it doesn't matter to me. And when it comes to chipping and pitching, I think what you're going to see over the course of the next 10 years is that golfers aren't even holding the club this way, rather are going more cross-handed. And I think that there's a lot of reasons why that's advantageous, which we've talked about in another video, which you can easily find. But moving back into a more traditional grip, what makes a good one versus what doesn't make it very functional. And I think it's a lot simpler to understand when we think about how we apply pressure to the handle. So you've probably noticed there's a cord hanging off of this grip, and this grip is actually made by a company called Sensor Edge. And what this grip is designed to do is to measure how I apply pressure with each hand across each finger. And I can see that just like we can see the pressure that we use in the ground. So it's massively cool and mega interesting, because what we're finding now is that how we apply pressure is much more important than how we position our hands. So just like we talk about getting away from the positions of the golf swing and getting more movement based, I think the conversation when it comes to a grip also needs to change. And one of the key things I think needs to change is when we talk about a grip, what are we gripping with? And that's something that I haven't heard a lot of videos discuss. So what we're first going to talk about is we're going to talk about our hands, and we're going to talk about what's our fingers versus what's our palm and how we load that right arm. So make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to really get into the nitty-gritty here and show you some simple ways to guarantee that you're making a functional grip that's really going to help you add some speed and precision to your game. So when we look at the hand and we think about the hand and the palm and the fingers, one thing that I think is pretty easy is if we look at your 4 fingers here, not your thumb, but just the 4 fingers, it's pretty easy to see that it's divided into 3 segments and the knuckles are in between the segments. So when we think about those 3 kind of different areas of the finger, we can kind of number them. So if we start close to the hand, we can call that 1. If we go a little farther out, that's 2. And then if we go to the tips, that's 3. So we've got this 3 segment finger, and we really want to think about how we use those fingers to grip the golf club, because when we grip the golf club, we're gripping this golf club with our fingers. We don't want to grip this club with our palms, because then we're making a fist. And I know that we're always trying to translate other sports to golf, but making a fist is not going to be nearly as nimble and accurate as using our fingers. So we want to learn how to create that white knuckle scenario to where we've really got a good hold there at the finger level, but I'm still pliable and movable throughout the rest of the arm, and I can do that with white knuckles. Now, if I make a fist and go white knuckles, now all of a sudden my shoulder is really mega tight and I've lost a lot of my range of motion. Not saying that I can't move it, I can, but I can feel a lot of tightness there, which is going to restrict my overall range of motion. So when we think about the 1, 2, 3 segments of the fingers, we can see that I'm going to lay it in there. And now I've laid that club right across those finger segments, just like we talked about. So we can see it's just kind of laying in there. There's no thumbs. Okay, we want to keep the thumbs out of here. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. but we just want to lay the club across those fingers. So if I hold this up so that Ian can see it, you can see that I've got white knuckles. I've got no thumbs, I've got white knuckles, I've got the club in my fingers, and I can make a golf swing very, very easily, no problems at all. So I can control it, I can move it, but we want to get the club more in our fingers, and we don't want to put our thumbs down and push, because when I push through the thumbs, I'm actually pushing through the wrist. So one thing that's worth noting here is if I'm pushing with a thumb, I'm not pushing against the golf club that way. I'm actually pushing against my wrist and locking out my wrist, which is going to play out throughout the rest of the arm unit. And eventually it's going to cause a mobility issue at the shoulder, which is really going to cause issues for me to get that face back around and quote unquote square relative to the path. So we've got to think about how this grip is affecting things downriver as well. So getting a fist on the golf club with the thumbs pushing is always going to be very restrictive to what I can do to the golf club. And the last thing I want to do is to restrict the movement, because as we know, I want to create some speed when I swing this golf club. I don't want to feel like I'm restricting the golf club moving through time and space. So we've talked about this idea of a functional grip and making sure that we're not sacrificing movement down the river from the grip because of a grip that's getting in our way. So how can we simplify that a little bit? How can we make that simpler? We know that we want to get it in the fingers, not make fists, but what can I do from there? Well, I think that there's some amazing tools that you can use that really make this simple and super helpful. So one of the things you could do is Super Speed makes this awesome grip product that they just came out with that I really like. And what you can do with this is you can just twist the living snot out of this thing. So I'm really feeling like I'm trying to twist that more through my fingers. I'm not trying to twist that through my wrist, but actually trying to twist my arms kind of more around it this way here, right? So I'm really putting a lot of twist into this grip. So the reason that that's so important is, like we said, putting pressure into the golf club or putting work into the golf club is always going to be a great thing for us. So what we want to do is we want to kind of simplify this, and we want to think about what are our hands and arms kind of doing throughout the backswing, and we want to feel like we're trying to load and apply pressure to the golf club. So as we move this golf club back, right, what we know is that somewhere near the top, the golf club's going to be moving away from the target and then transitioning back to the target. And the issue with that is that you're going to have to turn that club around and do something to change direction. So we know near the top of the swing, I should say what we've measured so far, is at the top of the swing, we're going to be applying a lot of pressure to that grip. And one thing that we can use this device to do is we can feel like we're twisting it and trying to get maximum twist at the top of that swing. And now we know that we're getting the pressure into the club and into the fingers and into the hands in a more appropriate way. And we see that we kind of lose this arm wanting to fly inside because we're not applying any pressure with my right hand. I'm just letting this fall in here, which tends to be a problem for a lot of golfers. So from down the line, we're just lifting our arms as we twist this handle. So we're twisting it, once again, trying to use the fingers to go white knuckle, and we want to feel like we have maximum twist near the top of our swing. That's really going to put us into an advantageous position with the hands, because once we get maximum pressure, we just let the pressure fall out and go left. So we're just going to twist as hard as we can and let everything fall out and go left. Super, super important that we are decreasing the amount of pressure in the hands so that the shoulder can orientate. So one of the things that we've seen measured is that you would think that there's a lot of pressure happening here at impact. But what we actually see is that there's a lot of pressure decreasing in that left hand, or what we've measured is there's a lot of pressure decreasing so that this shoulder can rotate in the socket and orientate the face back where we need it to be. It kind of knows how to do that. We started there, we know how to get back there, but this shoulder needs to be allowed to rotate in order for that to happen. So once again, if I've got my wrist locked out like this, once again, that locks out my shoulder. So from down the line, I take this club to the top, and if I keep this squeezed, you can see what happens. All of a sudden, my face is wide open, and it doesn't want to square, even if I shift my weight. that face is still open and it doesn't want to square. So letting this fall and the pressure decrease and letting it orientate is going to be super, super helpful. So getting into the fingers and then feeling like we're wringing out a towel. You can use a hand towel for this. If you don't have one of these products from Super Speed, a hand towel, just make sure it's a clean one. Don't use your golf towel one maybe, but get you a clean hand towel from the kitchen, wring that thing out. Now, once again, we're not trying to lock out the wrist. We're trying to do it more through the fingers and then trying to feel like you get it twisted as far as you can at the top and then just letting it fall. And that's going to be a super helpful way to kind of understand how we're trying to use the hands during the golf swing. So if you're still with us, you must be a really big gearhead and you must be super into golf. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty here and kind of really give you the reasons why we need to do these certain things with the hands. So dive in here a little bit with us, but we're going to take a trip down memory lane. If you remember Grandma and her butterscotch candies, she would give you one of those things and you would grab each end of the wrapper and you would pull apart and the candy would pop out. So that is kind of what we want to think about when we think about how the arm works. It's like we have a piece of candy in a wrapper and we would either pull it apart to open it or we would twist it really fast to close it. So what we want to do is we want to use our right arm and our left arm to actually twist. We're trying to twist these muscles. So when we actually get strong and apply force and pressure, we're actually twisting while we do that. We're three-dimensional, so we want to feel like there's this twist. Now, where it gets very interesting is if we start at the shoulder and then the elbow and then the wrist. If we think about, there's a midpoint there, and most people would say, yeah, the elbow, Mike, no doubt. But what it actually is this muscle just on the outside of the forearm. When you kind of bend your wrist backwards or put your wrist into flexion, you can feel this muscle pop out of your forearm. This muscle right here that you feel pop out is called your brachioradialis, and it's very, very important when it comes to loading and unloading the trail arm, which is how we create that frontal plane torque in the golf swing. So if we don't have our hand correctly applying pressure, it's going to be very difficult to load that muscle. And that is really one of my huge non-negotiables, is we have to create some load through the trail brachioradialis. So long story short, going back to Grandma's butterscotch candies, right? If I was to twist that candy this way, okay, the candy pops out. So if I twist my arm this way as I go back, the shoulder, okay, the ball of the shoulder, I should say, goes external rotation, and now the golf club is way behind me and kind of lost, and now there's no way for me to shallow, and I'm going to have a lot of issues. And a lot of that starts at the grip, right? So we see a lot of golfers that actually take this right hand and they get way underneath like this, right? So now my forearm is way up towards the sky, my brachioradialis is way underneath the golf club, and my shoulder is externally rotated. So now from here, it's very, very hard for me to make the golf club go up, and that starts in the grip. So what we're gonna talk about is we wanna feel like we load and twist around that butterscotch candy, which is the brachioradialis. So what we're gonna do here is we're actually gonna feel like our right arm is twisting around the golf club. So as we can see, my hand wants to go way more up in the air as I do that. Now, don't get me wrong, that's just the first part, and in transition, it twists the other way. So that, from down the line, makes it look like it's in a much better position to shallow and fall in front of me. So what we've got to do is we've got to get this muscle to feel like it loads, which it now feels like it has, and then I'm going to be able to keep that load and release it and create that frontal plane torque where I release the club head into the ball, which is super, super important in terms of creating speed and creating a stable club face through impact. But once again, it goes back to that grip. So getting it into the fingers, okay, into the troughs, I call them, with no thumbs, that's massively helpful, right? That's gonna allow for me to now be able to use my shoulders and my arms, and everything can move, because we said movement's the answer. Okay, so now that I've got it into the troughs, like we said, we want to feel like we squeeze those hands. We want to feel like we're twisting together. I don't feel that in my shoulders. I don't feel that in my arms. I feel that in my fingers. They are white knuckle. And now I'm going to let it fall and let it fall and let it fall. And now I'm in a position where I can actually deliver the club through and not have fear of my face shutting because I've established a functional grip. And a functional grip, by definition, in my opinion, would be that a grip that doesn't shut the face. I never want to see the face go shut because of the grip. If it's going shut because of the grip, I'm not going to be able to use my body throughout the golf swing to add speed. So creating this functional grip is definitely a step in the right direction when it comes to hitting the ball farther and straighter for almost every golfer out there. Without getting too far into the politics of golf, I think Brooks Koepka said it really well. PGA, posture, grip, alignment. I don't think that for most golfers, those three key pieces of advice are a bad place to start. I often think they get overlooked because they seem too rudimentary or too foundational. But at the end of the day, if we don't have our posture, our grip, and our alignment in a good place, we're going to have to do even more compensating than we already naturally have to do throughout the swing. So by understanding the grip and how we apply pressure to the handle and how we're trying to maybe take away a little pressure in the downswing, I think that's going to allow you to create more of this release, which is going to help create some speed and hopefully get more loft on the club. Because loft is definitely our friend when we're playing with the current golf ball that's urethane and doesn't want to spin. So I think there's a lot of good things that come from creating a more functional grip, and I definitely think it's something worth visiting at the start of every season. So if you have any questions about a grip, if you have a strong opinion about which grip is right and why, we're happy to hear that in the comment section, and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can. So thanks so much, make sure to subscribe, and until next time, keep grinding.